Okay, so I'm reading this Jack Kelley book, The Atlantis Puzzle, and looked at Serentidis' at the source, and the methodology, the Platonic methodology, is fabulous. They're even very Platonic in their reasoning, but they get to this point, and after they establish using very good logic that Atlantis was the Richat plateau, the Richat structure. Once they set you up on it, then they say that the likelihood that they built a massive city with canals, they say, oh no, it's false. They were just hunter-gatherers. Listen to this here.
So far, nothing matching Plato's descriptions has been unearthed.
There's another important concern as well. Not everyone agrees about the nature and extent of the waterways that existed in the Green Sahara.
So, in the book also they talk about how there's no irrigation found there. Well, actually, I went on Google Earth following this other insight. Now, these guys are kind of more in the Randall Carlson, Ancient Aliens thing. Too much for me. I'm somewhere in between Jack Kelley and Bright Insight. But listen to these guys. Okay.
Score lines, right?
This guy's been to the reshot.
Some type of, you can barely see it, but they're all parallel. They're not perfectly parallel.
His name is Stig Hansen.
But they're going up to the plateau. They're taking away the earth. Why? What are they doing? Are they mining for gold? Is gold in limestone? Or sandstone, sorry.
So this guy went to the reshot and he's looking at Google Earth and he is seeing evidence of large earth. And I am too. Do these lines that I showed you, do they look straight to you? Do they look man-made? They look man-made to me. It seems like, and maybe they were made after the destruction of Atlantis, but maybe they were made 4,000 years ago, or maybe 3,000 years ago when it was starting to dry. Maybe they were attempting to cope with the, but that shows the continuity down the history between the destruction of Atlantis in 9,600 BC and the rise of ancient Egypt, and even up to the Garamantes period. I'm not saying these canals were built at the time of Atlantis, but what I am saying is that maybe there was a continuity. That there's this. Now, to be fair to Jack Kelley, he says so far the existing narrative so far is that metallurgy in Africa did not go back to 9,600. It only went back to like 3,000 BC at the earliest. So he's saying with the evidence so far, and most of archaeology has only focused on Europe and Mesopotamia, and there's a saying that you will not find what you are not looking for, and perhaps with the rise of multipolarity, perhaps with more development in Africa, some maybe archaeological institutions, some parallel archaeological institutions that outside of Europe will begin to compete. It will begin to shed a new light that West African society was a lot more advanced before Egypt than we have been told. And also, keep in mind, if most of the institutions of archaeology are coming from Europe, you will not find what you are not looking for. If they're not going to be looking in Africa, they're not going to find evidence. All they're going to find, or it's censored. The Vatican Library and the British Museum know that there's a lot more sophistication at a far earlier period in West Africa than we are told. That's another thing too, imperial censorship. So, got to keep that in mind as well. That the only thing that's released to the public is that the only evidence released to the public is a bunch of obsidian flaked arrowheads and nothing more, nothing of any more sophisticated, no agriculture or anything. I mean, these lines here, I'm showing you with this screencast, these lines really do indicate agriculture. I'm sorry, but they do. They're man-made, not alien-made, not Anunnaki, just, sort of like on the Giza Plateau or in Mesopotamia, or other places like that, just Bronze Age canal making, basically. And they're pretty fantastic. These things are of immense size. Trees can grow in the middle of them and everything, and water still runs down them during rainy periods. That's why trees can grow in them. But these are clear. I don't see how these can be natural. I just do not see how. They had to have been built either by maybe, if not medieval medieval Sahelian civilization, which Mauretania is really, really dry compared to Mali. It's even drier than Mali and Burkina Faso. Or if we're talking about the wet Sahara period, maybe 5,000, 6,000 BC. But, Atlantis didn't just disappear and then go back into a complete dark age. And then you get Egypt. There's a continuity. There's a connection. There's a bridge between, and that is civilization did not die in Mauretania. It continued. There was a continuity all the way up until Egypt and Sumeria, and that's why there's like a whole block of history that's just not been just X out of history completely before Egypt, which is that West Africa has been completely written out. Now, another thing I would like to mention too is the bias towards megalithic stone construction, because we do not find evidence of large-scale megalithic stone construction in places that much, except for Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, before Egypt and Sumeria. But if you look at modern European architecture, 1700s, 1800s, a lot of it's wood and metal. A lot of it would have corroded away, and Jack Kelley does make that argument that any metal and wood would have corroded away, and therefore there would be no evidence. If you're in the Green Sahara, you're not going to have, you're going to have plenty of wood. You're going to have wood to burn. You can make metal and maybe make glass. We should look for glass there. Glass probably preserves more, especially if it's buried in mud. We might be able to find some intact glass jars. And you might be able to find that. That's something people should look for in West Africa and for agriculture. For evidence of advancement, civilizational sophistication in West Africa, from the period of Atlantis in 9,600 BC up until the beginning of modern Egypt, or ancient Egypt, classical Egypt. But another thing I would like to mention too is, now let's look at the Greek. Let's think about the Greek columns and the Minoan columns in the Bronze Age, and the Egyptian columns, the use of columnar stone architecture. Could that be a distant memory of a time period when logs, when tropical hardwood logs could be used as pillars, and when wood ran out because of the desiccation, people had to try to do a facsimile in stone, what they remembered from what they used to be able to do in wood. So you can fill in the picture of a beautiful mega acropolis on the Richat Structure, built out of nice, polished, beautiful wood columns, sort of like Victorian, like the legs of furniture, for example. You could be creative like that. Such things probably would have disappeared, and maybe would have corroded away when the city got destroyed in the tsunami from the earthquake. So that's another thing to is that we have a bias towards megalithic stone construction, and if we don't see any, then we say, well, these people must not have been that advanced. It must have been hunter-gatherers. And I think that we need to rethink, be more creative, and rethink what we think advanced civilization is, because if the United States and England disappeared, there wouldn't be that much evidence of we haven't built anything to last like the Greeks and the Egyptians did. Everything we've made is wood and metal, and some masonry too, or cement, but not as durable as anything the Greeks or the Egyptians built. And it's like, so in a green Sahara that's filled with tropical hardwoods and forests, it is more logical to assume that such ancient peoples would have built things out of wood a lot more, because you can do a lot more with it. You can carve a lot more with it. You can make artful things. More like I'm seeing African Atlantis as being looking more like China, ancient China or ancient Japan. That kind of wood architecture you see in the pagodas and the temples like that. I'm thinking more along that line.